Hey, welcome to the Profit Builder video series. I'm Vicki Suter, your host, and I'm the author of the book, The Profit Bleed, How Managing Margin Can Save Your Contracting Business. And these videos are all about helping you grow a more sustainably successful contracting business. And for over 25 years, I've been helping contractors increase their profits, generate more time in their day, and reclaim and refine the joy in what they do again. And that's what this video series is all about. And my goal is to help give you the thinking to be able to understand how to do that in your business. And then I actually give you tools and resources that help you implement what it is the video is talking about. So I hope you enjoy today's Profit Builder video.
Hey everyone, Dan here with the Designer Show. John's off today, but I've got a good friend, Vicki Suter, on the call with us. Let me actually put our faces up there so you can see what we look like. Hey Vicki.
Hi Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
How's the weather in Kansas?
The weather in Kansas is beautiful. It's a little humid because it's August, but I'm just learning about the weather here. So
you're acclimating to Kansas because you just moved from San Francisco.
Yes.
Yes. What a big move you did. That's absolutely amazing. So congratulations on getting settled in and you're getting back to business. So pretty amazing. Can't imagine moving.
It was better to move in the summertime than in the wintertime. Let me just say that. At least I get kind of like a little adjustment period.
Everything's better in the summertime. I don't think there's any question about that, except snow skiing. Anyway, so Vicki, today I thank you for being here. And Vicki's a good friend of mine. We're part of a mastermind together, and I've gotten to know Vicki over the years. And it's just fascinating, Vicki, the topics that you talk about when you get into talking about sales and working with contractors and all the different things that you do in your coaching. And I just keep going, how do you know that stuff? So it's really cool. And it's, you know, let me just start out by asking you kind of an off-business question. So kind of let's prime the pump here a little bit. So what is your passion? What's one of your favorite hobbies that you'd like to do away from work?
Cooking.
Cooking.
I love to cook.
That's great.
Cooking is my creative outlet.
Yes.
And I just find that it uses a different part of my brain, and it allows me to well, just to be creative, but also I'm Italian, you can tell from my hands. So we express love through cooking and feeding people. And I wrote a cookbook with my mom quite a while ago. And so it's just like, I love to cook. It's just like one of my favorite things to do besides being outdoors.
I can attest to your hobby being a passion because I've eaten some of your food and you are a really good cook. So your spaghetti and meatballs are fantastic. I tell you. Yeah, big treat. All right, cool. Yeah, and the cookbook you've got is really fascinating. All right, so Vicki, how'd you get in this industry? Someone that loves to cook Italian food. How'd you get into
Well, I was married to a painting contractor for 10 years.
Okay.
And when Bill and I were married, I watched him go through the challenges of running a construction company and just all of the different issues that he had to deal with the client side and the business and the finance side and marketing and all that. And I helped him some as he was growing that business. And then after I had our son, I decided I was going to stop working for someone else 70 hours a week because I really wanted to be able to be home with my son more. And my first client was a design build client. And I just started building clients from there. And I realized that I loved working in this particular industry, in this market. I like the people, and I really enjoy just the authenticity and the hard work and the intelligence of this industry. So I just decided to stick with it.
That's cool. I think sometimes our industry gets a bad rap. It does. I mean, in some cases, deservedly so. But overall, it really is an industry full of a lot of fantastic people. So let me ask you this. So you do a lot of coaching with contractors, and you've been doing this for what, 30 years now.
Yes.
Yeah, believe me, I
I
know.
think that makes me sound really old, Dan.
Well, don't worry, we're old. And everybody on the call, you're going to get old too someday, so don't worry about it. But it's amazing how fast those years go. But so what have you, in those years that you've been doing this, what have you seen change? Has anything changed that much from when you first started doing this?
Yeah, a lot has changed. Technology at so many levels has changed. When I first started, computers and people getting PCs and Macs in their offices was fairly new in that era in the early 90s. So certainly that has completely changed the face of the industry and how we do business, which is great. And, it's interesting because I was thinking about this question earlier. And one of the things that I have seen has been a really big change in the recession, that great recession that we hit in 2008-9 that lasted for those 5 years. It changed the customer. The customer became much more, instead of the customer relying completely on the contractor or designer to tell them like how they should think or see or function, or the decisions that they should make, what started to happen was that the consumer started to look online and become much more educated before they engaged in those relationships. And so it was interesting to see how that shift has really changed how we do business, how we engage with people, and has required us to, it used to be, it was like, well, I'm the expert and I'll explain to you how it has to happen. And while that is still completely true, you now are dealing with somebody who is armed with way more information than they used to be, accurate or not.
Yeah.
It's still our job to educate them, but it requires us doing so in a different way. And so those are some of the really big changes that I have seen in the industry in terms of like how we operate and how contractors operate and how the customer has changed.
Yeah, it has changed quite a bit, that part of it. How about the business part of it? From, you've probably seen a lot of contractors that have gotten into this industry maybe by accident, or, they were a good carpenter and all of a sudden they get a few jobs and all of a sudden now they're a contractor. So what have you seen change in that realm as far as?
I would say it's along the same lines, Dan, that just being good at your trade isn't enough. And that the whole thing of understanding how people buy and why they buy, that you have to be more sophisticated in your ability to be able to attract people to want to do business with you.
Sure.
And more sophisticated in terms of how you present yourself out into the marketplace, because it's no longer, just a word of mouth business.
Yeah.
Even when you've been referred to somebody, people are still going to go look you up on Yelp, or they're going to look you up on Google, or they're going to go, search for your bio on LinkedIn, or go see what you do on Facebook. It's like anymore, we are very public. And if we're not, and it doesn't, it's not to say, like, as I know a lot of people who aren't on Facebook, or they don't engage in their LinkedIn. So it's not to say that you have to be this bulleted approach to everything, but understanding that it requires more sophistication in how we market, in how we sell, in how in the technology we use in terms of managing projects. That can make all the difference in the world between somebody who gets a job and doesn't. If you're bidding on a large job and the customer says, well, what do you use to keep us informed? If you say it's all on paper and pen in a meeting, they might go, but I got Joe over here who's sending me updates from Co-Construct once a week.
Online.
So I think, as they say, technology, I think, has dramatically changed and impacted how contractors have to think and be different. And and that's been true for hundreds of years. It's like that. We've had to learn and adapt and change as our environment changes.
Yeah, well, I remember going from the one-rate check system to the, QuickBooks accounting, and back in the DOS days, and now look what we've got for technology. So,
I hate to say this, but punch cards.
Oh yeah, I remember. I never used them, but I remember those. Yeah.
I
So
have. Yeah.
anyway, Jeff says hi. Back with Left Construction. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh,
those.
hey, yes. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, cool. And Alex, that have Google. Yeah, yeah. I mean, socially, some people are not on social media anywhere, so you can't find out much about them. But someone's going to put information out there about you, good or bad. So you got to be careful with what you do, and you just want to do a good job all the way around. So, what have you seen change in the design world? Okay, so I mean, we got the designer show here, and we got a lot of designers on here. So back 30 years ago versus today, what have you seen change as far as designers go?
I would say all of those things still apply.
Yeah.
I also see that the whole thing of showrooms, in showrooms being the way that, and this is really the good news for designers too, right? Like that showrooms were the way to educate people or get people to make selections and choices.
Mm-hmm.
That the advent of things like House, or just some of the other tools that are out there for designers have really allowed them to be much more effective, save a lot of time in terms of the time and energy that they're spending on going back and forth with clients, but also managing that whole selection process,
Yeah.
which can be so time consuming.
Yeah.
Getting people to make decisions is that ability to be able to use technology more can really save people time. And I think this is a super interesting time that we're in, Dan, right now with the pandemic and the shelter in place and the requirement that so many of us, all of us are facing in terms of having to do business differently. I think it's like, I'm always looking for what's the blessing in this. Like,
Yeah.
what is the gift that we're going to take away from this time in our lives that is going to have made us better human beings, better business people, better parents, better spouses, whatever. And I think that there is something that's going to happen and that is happening that's going to alter how we do business, that is really about creating more quality of life and life-work balance for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And requiring us and pushing us to go beyond our comfort level about how we engage with customers and having to be, doing more things online. And I think there's so many great tools and resources out there to help people do that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So
I mean, I consider it my desk working with
right now.
And I can sit at my desk working with a client online and get their address, and bam, I'm looking at their house. And sometimes they're even out in front of it in the pictures. It's kind of funny. And, just you want to look up some material, bam, here's what we got. I mean, it's all instant. It's all there. It's pretty amazing. So, but one thing hasn't changed, in my opinion, and it's you got to sell stuff. And that's kind of why you're here today. So let's talk a little bit about that psychology of sales. And, I even run into people today. It's like I find some people really hard to talk about what I want to charge. And other people, it's like, yeah, that's just what I charge. And I still don't know why that is. I know what I want and that's what I go for, but it's just, sometimes you have that level of comfort with some people that you don't with others. And I know I talk to a lot of designers out there these days that are just scared to death to charge what they're worth. Partly because they don't know, but partly it's just that they were never trained how to sell. So what's your take on that?
You just touched on a number of different topics.
Yeah.
In that one statement. So one thing that really stands out for me about the whole thing of sales is that a lot of times, so I'm going to start with what you said what you asked me in terms of what's the psychology around sales. One thing that's super important to understand is that people don't come to you unless people don't embark on remodeling their house, renovating their kitchen, redoing something. We don't embark on change unless there's something that's not working, there's a breakdown, or there's a highly desired state that's unfulfilled.
Okay.
Those are the only reasons. Like there's some agitation or discomfort or something that that's not working that we want to have be different, that
Or-
sparks our
okay.
desire to make a change. So when someone comes to you and they say, I want to redo my kitchen, usually what they're talking about is, well, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to have a new, refrigerator and I want these countertops updated and I've been looking on, house and I came up with all these ideas, and they want to talk about how they want it to be. One of the things I say, though, is that the first thing that you want to do is understand where the pain is. And one of the ways to do that is to start to have a set of questions around okay, well, so I understand that you want a new kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about your current kitchen that you don't like? What are the things that are dissatisfying to you about it? How is it a problem for you? And then somebody says, well, it's uncomfortable. Okay, so tell me how it's uncomfortable. Or they say it's cramped. Well, okay, so tell me how it's cramped. Like, is it more than one of you in the kitchen? Like, tell me about, kind of how you work in your home or in your kitchen. Or they say, I'm embarrassed. Well, what specifically embarrasses you, right?
Sure.
So kind of asking those questions that dig a little bit deeper into the psychology of and the pain of what it is that's not working. Now, here's an interesting thing. We don't like to have people be in pain, right? We hear a problem and we instantly want to go fix the problem. We want to be like, and we don't want to make people uncomfortable. But the truth is, unless you get to the thing that's not working for someone and really understand the not working part, you will not be able to, it will take you much longer to create a solution that makes them happy and has them be satisfied.
Okay.
One of the interesting things about digging into the pain of what someone's experiencing and the reasons why what they don't like and really being willing to hang out there for a while is that it lets you provide a better solution when that time comes. And one of the things that I also say is that when you're in that, so I'm as I'm talking, like I have this image in my head of a sales process. So I have found that having a sales process makes all the difference in the world in being able to start to shift that conversation that you're having with somebody, so that instead of you reacting and responding to someone's request, you actually start to drive that process of how that sales cycle is going to go.
Okay.
There's two things that happen by having that, and I'll talk a little bit more about what do I mean by a sales process. But having a process that's written where you're driving those questions and you're driving the process and you're saying to a customer, I have a process. That now what you start to do is you start to get more control over, all right, I'm going to make sure I have all the information I need about what's not working, about what it is that client really wants before I give them a solution. And when I am able to get really good information like that, there's a couple of things that happen. When you start to ask people questions about what's not working and say back to them, okay, so if I hear you correctly, you're feeling really cramped in your kitchen. And you said, when I asked you how, you said, well, it's you and your husband trying to make meals together in the kitchen, which is something you really enjoy, but you kind of bump into each other, and so you're looking.
Get out of my way, damn it!
Right? So now the customer is there, and the customer's going, yeah, like he gets me, she gets me. Like you understand and you hear. When you ask people, I always say questions are such a gift. Questions are the thing that help that customer who's just been focusing on what do I want and not really focusing on what I don't want, that by you asking them questions, they're going to have a greater sense of clarity, and you will too.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a greater sense of clarity. When you ask them a lot of deep questions that let them really flush out and get what's not working, they're going to be clearer. And when they're clearer, they will be more confident about being able to make a choice about where to move next.
Yeah.
And so questions help you have clarity and confidence, as well as help the customer have clarity and confidence. When you do that for somebody, you build trust. When you build trust, they're going to go, oh, as I said, you get me, you hear me, you listen to me.
Yeah.
So that ability to hang out in the what's not working part is a critically important piece. And the second piece I say about a sales process that's really key is that oftentimes when we hear that there's something that's not working, we want to get into action and start solving the problem. And I would say that that is not actually your second step. Your second step is actually to find out what they would like and find out what the solution, like what's their ideal outcome. So I know it's really cramped right now. Your ideal solution would be like, what do you want to be? How do you want to be able to move around your kitchen with your husband when you're cooking? Where is it that, you know, how do you envision that looking? And then including questions like, when would you like to have that happen? And, you know, how do you see that feeling and looking? Like, you want to ask a lot of questions that get your customer thinking about that future state and that future experience of what that will look like and feel like.
Right.
Now what you've done, and this is, I'm going to tell you that what I'm sharing with you, this process is based on the neuroscience of how our brains work. I've studied how our brains work and what it is that motivates human beings and what it is that motivates us to change and what it is that has us take change at different rates.
So there's a method to the madness, you're saying?
There's a method to the madness.
All right.
So the thing is that when you're really clear about what's not working and you're really, you know, you have these two things of I'm clear about what's not working and I'm really clear about what I want. If I'm the customer, that when I'm really clear about those two things, it starts to create this tension that I want to resolve. It's just how we're wired.
Yeah.
And so now when you offer a solution that's going to help them get from where they are to where they want to be, now what you've done is you have created, you have this clarity about these things, which, by the way, is going to be invaluable to you. And that you have now given the customer more clarity and confidence also, so that when you offer a solution, they're actually more clear about being able to make a decision of yes. So the pieces or the process is really about get super clear about what's not working, get super clear about what it is that they want, and then offer a solution that's going to fill the gap to get them from where they are to where they want to be.
That's cool. Yeah. I like that comment about finding out what makes them uncomfortable, you know, what's bugging them. And because that's really the reason they called in the first place.
Right.
And, you know, knowing that information is really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. In fact,
and some of the time, and sometimes people don't want to, oddly enough, I mean, and you guys have seen this, it's like sometimes people don't want to talk about the thing they're embarrassed about, or they don't want to talk about the thing that, you know, bothers them and so on. And that's part of what's our job is to just understand that nobody called us because everything was working great.
Right.
You know, I always say that to people when I'm talking to them in a sales conversation. I go, you know, I get that there's a lot that you've done well in your business, but I'm pretty sure you didn't call me because everything was great. You called me because something wasn't working. So let's talk about that. You know, I want to say something too. This thought keeps coming to mind. I had this experience this week with a designer.
Okay.
And my husband and I are trying to find a new couch and some chairs for our living room. And we have made very bad choices about our couches in our life, more than once.
Yeah.
And I've told her this. And so we met her at this showroom and she started showing us some different couches and so on and so forth. And I was kind of like, I don't, you know, I had this image in my mind that I thought that we should have this particular type of couch. And so I whipped out this picture from this other place we had gone. And I said, well, what do you think about that? And, you know, is that really going to solve our problem? And she was like, well, you can get that couch if you would like. That's just not something that I sell. And, you know, I'm not really like, but I can help you choose fabric and color and so on and so forth. And she was being very helpful and accommodating, but something in the whole interaction, we spent over an hour with her in this showroom, was very like, just kind of like, I felt like I was pulling or pushing to try to get an answer. And it was later that night when my husband and Tim and I were talking, and I said, I know what it is. I said, she wasn't asking us. I was
Right.
trying to have to figure out what the problem was with the couch we had been choosing in order to be able to figure out what was the best couch for us.
Yeah.
And she wasn't asking any of those questions about what wasn't working and, well, why was it working? And tell me why you think that you need a couch with a, that's a recliner. And what is it that you don't like about the couches? Like, she didn't ask any of those questions. And I thought, if she'd had asked those questions, we actually probably would have made a choice about a couch that day. But after an hour, we were in no different of a place than when we started. And here's the thing. I know she's going to spend more time with us, that I don't think she really wants to spend time with us walking around, furniture showrooms.
Yeah.
So it was just a great example of like this whole thing of how asking questions could have shortcut the process and had us probably make a choice about a couch.
So she was going right into solving the problem.
Yes.
Of which she didn't really know what the problem was.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah. So it was great that I had that experience this week before.
Yeah. Good example. Yeah. And that's true for us so many things, and especially starting the process of working with someone on a new project. It's just like, yeah, what's the problem here? Most people will tell you, yeah, the house too small, I need room, and we're bumping into each other, and they'll tell you that. But I think it's a good idea to keep digging, because sometimes you'll find things that go way beyond just that initial problem.
Yes.
Possibly. I mean, it's hard to say. And then I don't know. I feel myself, I've got pretty good at continuing the question process. Just keep asking questions, and sometimes you ask a question, offer a small solution. Ask a question, offer a small solution. Don't try to make this big solution. So what? I guess I'm kind of come up here with, why do so many people have trouble with that process, or that, just, is it inherent that they just don't know how to do it?
What I have found, Dan, is that I think that sometimes it's that people don't know how to create a sales process. They go, oh, my process is I answer the phone. I go visit the client, or nowadays I have the client do a walkthrough maybe with their phone, or do some socially distanced walkthrough. I take down information on my yellow pad of paper, and then I do a proposal, or I do a schematic and a design, and I come back with them and I say, here's what, I've heard. That's not, when I say sales process, that's not actually, I'm talking about something a little bit more robust than that, and something that actually is not just responding to the request to come and do some work, but it's actually driving that process. And so what do I mean by driving that process? So I'm just gonna walk through with you like a whole sales process.
Okay.
So when the customer calls and they say I got referred to you, I saw you on Dan's show, I heard you speak, and I would like to talk with you about your services. I have this project I want to do. Okay. Great. Let me just tell you about my process. So you don't just chime in, you don't just launch into a conversation anymore. It's usually a voicemail or something like that, or even an email. But even in that you say, listen, I have a process that I go through. And the first part of the process is that we have a 30 to 45 minute phone conversation, or however long it is for you, where I am going to ask you a whole bunch of questions to understand whether or not I am the best solution for you. And if I am not, I will make a recommendation of what I think is a better solution for you. Okay. Then you have that phone meeting with them, and then you let them know in that phone meeting, here's how our process works. We do this initial, and you might even do this in the initial phone call. our process works. We do this initial phone meeting. If it makes sense for us to move forward, then we will come out and do a measure, or we'll come out and do an in-person meeting, walk the property and walk the space, and then do an additional analysis or assessment about what it is that's needed. And then we'll have some conversation about that. And then I will come back and we'll do a design. We'll do a mock-up design for you. At that point, we also find out what we want to be clear about. And I'm going to ask you this today, what your budget is, because I want to make sure that I'm not designing outside of what your budget is.
Right, right.
So you right off the bat are opening the conversation with, in order for me to design for you what you want, I need to know how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
This isn't a guess and, this isn't a hope and guess game. Otherwise, you're going to get frustrated and we'll
I know. Yeah.
Right. So, so that's the first part, is that phone meeting. The second part is when you go to do the walkthrough, you literally have, and even in that phone meeting, you have a list of questions pre-prepared that you're going to ask on a worksheet. Now, I will tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I created this sales process for myself, I want to say probably 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer.
Okay.
What I realized is that when I have a phone conversation with somebody and I do not have my list of questions in front of me, instead of taking 30 or 45 minutes, that conversation takes an hour and a half, because I'm kind of trying to remember, all right, what are all the things that I want to ask them? And what I have found is that having the written sales questions in front of me, that what it allows me to do is to not have to be distracted by trying to remember the questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
It allows me to be much more present with that person and being able to ask more in-depth questions, knowing that I know the next question to ask. Just like you, before we got onto this, this call today, that you had questions that were prepared ahead of time that make the time go and flow much more easily. Well, when you are prepared with those questions, it really allows you to be much more present with that person, and you're not going to forget to ask anything.
Right, exactly.
I don't know about you, but I've walked away from sales conversations where I'm like, oh,
damn. Yeah.
Well, I got to go back and I got to ask it again.
Yep, done that.
And the same thing is true when you do the walkthrough meeting. Create a checklist. Create a form for yourself where you're marking things off and you're checking things off. Like, don't rely on your brain to remember. Now, your brain will probably remember. For a lot of you, you've been doing this for a gob of years, and you could do it in your sleep.
Right.
And I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'm telling you, I still have that form in front of me every time I get into a sales conversation, because it really keeps me present and focused on what is my goal in this part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that in that first conversation, when you're a designer, a contractor, you're not trying to sell a job.
Right.
All you're trying to do is to get to the next appointment. So that initial conversation, every single solitary conversation that you have, is intended to get clarity about where the gap is between where they are and where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then for you to ultimately will provide a solution. But what you want to keep thinking about, my goal is to be clear about where they are, clear about where they want to be. So the initial conversation has a certain set of questions to help you get there. And I have a sales process that I'm going to share with your watchers and listeners here, Dan.
Cool.
That will walk you through some samples of what those questions would look like.
Okay.
So then even in the walkthrough meeting, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, what do I need to know? What do I need to understand about where they are now and where they want to be, including how much money do they want to spend? What's the result that they want? In that either phone conversation or that in-person meeting, you're tackling that money conversation right away. Because the last thing in the world that you want is to have them not tell you that. I'm sure everybody who's ever, who's been in construction can say that, you cannot give them a budget without understanding what their budget is.
Exactly.
The design without understanding what that is. So I just think that the more you can be comfortable with having a process, and being clear about what are the questions that you need to ask to help you and them have clarity so that you have more confidence. Those are really key every step of the way. And the third part of your sales process is, and this is a little bit different now, because I would have said, don't email it and then wait for the phone ring.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but maybe what you do now is, you present it via a Zoom meeting or team meeting, whatever.
That's part of that confidence level. I think some people are afraid of rejection, so they'll just email that proposal, the estimate, whatever you want to call it, hoping that the client will say, sure, let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And they won't have to face that. No, it's too much money.
But here's the thing, Dan, if you have a process and you have a list of questions and you let the questions, if you let the questions be the thing that drives the process, then what you do is the customer and you both understand, hey, there is this thing that I'm going to use as a way for us to have great clarity. If you just explain that to the customer and you're in good communication about, why do I have this process? Well, I have this process so that I can be super clear. My goal is to build something or to design something that's within your budget that you're going to love, that's going to fit your space. In order for me to do that, I'm going to have to ask a lot of questions.
Right.
Because the more questions I ask, the clearer you're going to be, the clearer I'm going to be, the better solution I can offer you. And so if you are, the more you can just talk about it, the more confidence you will have in that sales process. Because again, now what you're doing is, instead of reacting to a request, you're driving a process. By you saying, I have a process, here's my process, and here's how it's going to go, then you're no longer reacting and responding, you're driving. And one of the other key things that I say, Dan, is that as you explain every step of the process, you want to get agreement from this person. So this is another psychological thing. When you say, here's our process, are you okay with that? Yes, great. All right. And even when you do the walkthrough meeting and you go, so our process is that here's the next step in our process. Are you okay with meeting via Zoom to go over an initial schematic?
Get them used to saying yes. Huh?
Get used to them saying yes, and get used to getting agreement is the important piece. Because as human beings, we take our agreements very seriously. And the likelihood of them keeping their agreement means that you actually got an agreement, as opposed to something that's open-ended. The more you can make your engagements with, before you walk away, you have a meeting scheduled. Don't leave it open. It'll help you manage your time, by the way, much better, right? That's totally true for me, that when I leave a meeting, I don't go, well, we'll figure out when our next meeting is next week. Why? That's just another thing I have to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it now. When do you want to meet again? So it can. And the last thing I'll say about this, Dan, is that when you have a process and people see that you have a process, they will trust you more and they will have more confidence in you. And the truth is, you'll have more confidence too.
Yeah.
Because you know that there's something that you have that's going to shepherd them through the process. And if you just follow the process will dictate. It's not about me anymore. I got this process, and the process is going to shepherd us to the right solution and the right answer. And we're not the best solution for everybody, right?
True.
So ideally, you've screened them out in the very first phone call to determine whether or not that's the case.
Right.
Don't go see somebody. Don't go look at a project without having an initial screening conversation. Don't. It's just a waste of your time.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So cool. We got about 20 minutes left, and I just wanted to let everybody know that if you're watching this at Chief Experts Academy, let me just show my screen here. You can scroll down here, and come on, there we go. So there's a little button here to get Vicki's toolkit here, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And Vicki also wrote this wonderful book called The Profit Bleed, and I got my little copy right here, and signed nicely by you, Vicki. Thank you very much. And it's really a wonderful read. It's a parable. She tells Well, Vicki, you tell everybody about your book.
Okay. So the book came out of the body of work that I've been doing with clients for all these years. I actually, it got published a couple of years ago. And it's all about how does every aspect of your business, from marketing to estimating to sales to production to finance to project management, how do all of those elements drive or detract from the profitability of your business? And what are the different things to pay attention to in each of those areas that let you keep your finger on the pulse of those critical elements? And one of the things I say, construction, there's a lot, it's complicated in so many ways. There's so much complication in building, in codes. Construction cost accounting is the most complicated next to manufacturing of any type of firm, a company that you would run into.
Yeah.
However, all that being said, the ability to be successful and profitable in this industry, there are a handful of things, and I'm going to say maybe like 12 things in your entire business that if you just made sure that those are the things that you paid attention to, and I'm putting my hands up here because I go, if you manage from 30,000 feet and you manage from the whole of your business and those most critical elements that drive your success, or what I call the pulse points that are the success of your business, then you will be able to better control outcomes in every one of those areas. So the book is about what are those things. The book is about what are the things, what are the ways to look at it. And then throughout the book, I give you a whole bunch of tools and resources to let you apply the learning that I point out or the highlight within that chapter.
Yeah, it's really a great book. It's really it's an easy read too. It's very entertaining as you're reading it. So
I wrote it specifically as a parable because I liked I love that format of a book.
Yeah.
And I find them easy to read. And I just found it actually follows the journey, and it's probably a compilation of like a number of clients that I've worked with, but there was a specific company that I had worked with that really so many of those things applied to that it just made it kind of more fun to be able to use real life examples.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, you guys, I recommend getting it to about 15, 17, I don't know how many dollars it is. It's very inexpensive. Good read, good to have with you. You take your stick-em notes with, and when I read it, I had my phone with my writing on it, and I was making notes and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, this is really cool. So I highly recommend it. Good information. And again, thanks for that. And the other thing, Vicki, why don't you talk about this a little bit? So again, on the web page there, you can click the little button here to get the toolkit. And if you're watching this other than where you are right now, you might see it on YouTube or Facebook. There will be a link in the text to get to both of these things. So click on that link. If you're watching it in my blog after this, you'll see it at the bottom of the video. So feel free to go ahead and get those links. We'll leave those active. And so tell everybody a little bit about your sales process toolkit here. It's a PDF that people can download.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to bring it up on my side.
Yeah, why don't you do it? Then you can scroll through it. I'll stop sharing my screen. And if you want to share your screen, then you can explain the toolkit to everybody. Again, it's this whole thing about processes and systems and having a blueprint to follow. I mean, you guys should understand blueprints, right?
Yeah, it's a good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy. It's no different than having a blueprint. And that's kind of what the book is about too, right? It's that whole thing of, do I have a blueprint that tells me those critical elements?
Right.
Or even looking at like a critical path schedule, that there are certain lead, lags, predecessors, right? That things feed off of each other in the entire process. And if you could look at it like having a sales process is no different than having a blueprint or a good schedule for a project that tells you, that guides you along your path, as opposed to, beautiful analogy, actually. It guides you along your path about what are you building to, right? So a good sales process is going to do that. Yes. So this sales process toolkit kind of goes through just some, walks you through a little bit of, what's the background, and then kind of talks about the whole thing about the importance of asking questions. But in your first call, like I said, and this says 15 to 20 minutes or however long that is for you, but you want to set a time and be prepared for the call. You want to come into it, and I suggest having, as I said, like an intake form or a written form for every one of these stages. And what you want to do is find out what's not working and what the customer would like, right? So that goes back to that thing of, I'm super clear about what's not working and I'm super clear about what they want. That helps me know how to move into the next stage of that relationship with them. And then in the in-person meeting where you're doing the inspection, again, I have 45 minutes here. I will tell you that some of the timeframes that I have on here are based on what I have seen successful contractors use, and some of the time in terms of days, just in terms of having it be expedited and having it be tightly, controlled.
Yeah.
And then also not wasting your time. So in the in-person meeting, that you're identifying the scope, the physical inspection, confirm what is not working, and illuminate other issues or problems. Again, remember I said that's always the first place that you're going to start. Confirm what the client would like and get more details. And then ask the client other questions about what is important to them. And that's what we were kind of talking about later. And then you're educating them about your process and how it works. So this is your opportunity to not only understand the scope of work, but the other important thing is to explain to them how your process works so that they are clear. And the clearer they are, the more confident they will be. The more confident they are, the more they will trust you, and the more that you will build rapport and a relationship with them where they're going to want to continue to move forward. So the whole process of, I have a process, I have my process written down, I'm asking really good questions. That whole process is the thing that lets the customer feel more comfortable and at ease, and will help you build rapport with them more quickly. And then in the proposal, submitting the proposal, I recommend that you set a time frame. I have down here within 5 days. And that you have this meeting in person, and that you go over what the issues are and what they said they wanted. Right, so you're going to reiterate, here's what I heard wasn't working, here's what I heard that you want, here's what we talked about in terms of general design that you were looking for, here's the solution that we came up with. And then in that process, again, I'll just say, the clearer you can be about, here's how we will solve that problem also, is an important part of helping the customer have that clarity so that they have that confidence so that they can choose you. And so within this template there's the initial phone meeting, and I go through and I give you in here what are some of the things that might be on that checklist for that initial phone meeting. And then in the walkthrough meeting, there is what are all the things that should be on your walkthrough meeting checklist. And so this gives you some ideas. Again, this was based on real contractors, real sales process, and real designers. And then tell them what the process will be for this meeting. So this is sort of like walks you through each of those steps.
Yeah, Laura's wondering, does this process work for kitchen design companies? It seems to be geared more toward contractors.
It works for anything. I mean, really, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Dan.
Yeah, hang on. There you go.
So really, it's like your questions, if you're a kitchen designer, kitchen showroom, or did you say cabinet designer?
Kitchen design company.
Kitchen design company. You have a process. All you're trying to do is you want to codify that process in a way that allows you to give yourself clarity and confidence about what are the steps I need to take, and helps your customer be clear and confident every step of the way in that relationship, so that you are in the driver's seat as opposed to just reacting and responding.
Yeah.
So while I appreciate that that you may have a different process, you may have a different set of questions. So the important piece isn't that you mimic necessarily those questions that I have on that process and that toolkit, but more importantly, that you have a system and you have a process. Because when you do, it actually starts to shift that. And you don't want to be a slave to it too. So let me just say that, sometimes I think that when people get into the certain industries or certain segments of the market, they become really beholden to the process being more important than the relationship. And I would never recommend that.
Right.
But it should be the guiding post, the guiding tool to help you along the way, just like a schedule gets changed, or just like a set of plans sometimes can have changes made to it as you're in the process. But it is the overall goal and the overall plan for what you want to have happen. This is no different than having a sales process.
Yeah, I remember back when I was contracting, I had a sheet with about, 15 questions on it. And I would kind of just go down the list of those questions. I'd write, I'd try to write while I'm talking, or I'd fill it in after I was done with the call. Because 2 weeks later, when I come back to that client, I go, what did we talk about? Oh, yeah.
That's the other thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
A big benefit. Mm-hmm.
So it kept me on track with the questions I needed to get answers for. How many other bids you're going to get? If they say, well, I'm going to get 10 bids and I'm going to pick the lowest bid. It's like, well, yeah, no, thanks.
So Deanne, that's a great question to ask right in that initial conversation, and to find out how are they planning on going. So another way to ask that, maybe not how many bids you're going to get, but it could be, if you don't want to ask that direct question, is just what's your process for making a decision?
Actually, my process was, are you talking to other contractors? Are you planning to, talk to other contractors? And of course, I'm expecting them to say yes.
Well, and if your process is where you work on a negotiated basis, then say that.
Yeah.
If you're a contractor or a designer who goes, here's how we work in that initial conversation, that we don't do hard bidding. We do negotiated contracts with people, and here's what a negotiated contract looks like.
Right. So, no, yeah, there's just this whole idea of having a process that you can follow. It gives you a track record, first of all, if you're documenting it, whether you're doing it on a sheet of paper or on a computer, which that's technology now. We can do that on any program we want. That's really great advice. So thank you for that. Let's see, we've got 8 minutes left. So tell me, Vicki, what's kind of one of the proudest things that the thing you're most proud about in your career up to this point? I mean, you've helped a lot of people, and I know you've coached a lot of people. And tell everybody a little bit about how coaching works after you tell us what your proudest thing is.
Okay. There's actually 2 things that I would say I am proudest of. And I'm going to tell you, so I'll tell you the personal one first. When I was 35, I went back to school nights and weekends and completed my bachelor's degree.
Woo!
For me, it was like a huge insecurity that I had about not having completed my degree. And I'm like, how am I out here like telling people what to do in their business? And I don't have a bachelor's degree in business. And I had an extensive background in finance, and I had an associate's degree, and I had, business and all that in my background in finance. But I didn't have like that thing on my wall. And and I did it while I was running a business. I was a single mom, and I had no life for 2.5 years, other than my son, my business, and school. And I loved the process, and I loved the experience, and I loved that I challenged myself in that way and discovered what was possible. And that, so that was, I would say, in my career, one of my greater accomplishments, or something I'm proud of. Let me just put it.
Yeah.
And I would say in my business overall, is that I have helped so many people create the businesses and the lives that they always dreamed of and had not been able to create on their own. And I love watching people transform their lives into being able to go from, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it, to building businesses that are hugely successful, where they have money in the bank, they're able to take time off, and it's not just the money part of it, but it's like the money gives them the opportunity to be able to have the life that they desire and want, and they can take time off and spend more time with their kids, and to eliminate the constant worry that is so much a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Mhm.
Love that I've impacted so many people's lives, and they're then everybody who works for them too. So
Cool.
that's hugely satisfying.
That's nice. So you do coaching. What does that mean? Yeah, people call you and you tell them what to do.
Well, what I say is I'm a business consultant and coach, and so I'll just make the distinction for you.
Okay.
So as a consultant, I help people get super clear about where they are now in their business, where they want to go, right?
Yeah,
That thing I was
yeah.
talking about before, and help them navigate. First of all, create a plan that codifies those goals in a way that they have clarity about where they're headed, just like a blueprint would do, just like a schedule would do. We do that in their business. And then I help them get their teams aligned with those goals and help them develop teams that take ownership and help them develop their leadership skills so that they can start to manage from the result of what their team is doing as opposed to task.
Sure.
So that's one of the key ways that people get freedom from their business and don't work, 60 hours a week,
Yeah.
is when you learn how to empower people around you to take ownership in part of the game.
So, and who do you mostly do your coaching with? What size company?
My average client that I do one-on-one work with is between 2 million and 15 million.
Okay. In sales.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to finish making the distinction here because you asked me about coaching.
Yeah.
So that's a consulting piece. And then the third piece of the consulting piece is that I help people. I teach people how to manage by results in their business. I teach them how to have the feedback systems and how to use those systems to manage from 30,000 feet, or those pulse points, right? Those critical elements that drive success. So that's the consulting side of it.
Yeah.
And the coaching side of it is, I say, so I'm a certified business coach, and I'm the person that will tell you what nobody else will tell you. In having studied NLP and how the brain works, I also understand that the thing that keeps people from getting what they want in life is usually beliefs that get in their way. And so I help people reveal what are the beliefs that are holding them back.
Okay.
That's where the coaching part comes in. The coaching part is more about the being that person to dig deeper on the levels of what is it that might be really getting in your way and stopping you from having the results that you want in your business and in your life.
Cool. So I this is not really meant to be a commercial for you, but it's kind of turning out that way, which is fine. Because you're really good at what you do, and you only take on so many clients, and I don't think you have a lot of room right now. So what would you say to people that want to get a coach and don't know how to go about finding one? Any advice there?
I would say that to be clear about what it is that isn't working and what it is that you would like. So spend some time thinking about what it is that's not working that you're looking for help with.
Mm-hmm.
And that I would recommend that if you're in the industry, that you find somebody to coach you who understands your world. Yeah. And then somebody that, has, quite frankly, a process. Like I always say to people, you will never hear the words out of we'll never start a phone call with, what would you like to talk about today? Like some people who are coaches, all they are is just you have a conversation with them every week and they're just a sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a sounding board, but we work on a project. We're up to something. Where do you, I'm always clear about where do you want to go in your business, and we're identifying what those goals are, and we're keeping you on course with getting to your goal.
Cool.
So I just think that's critically important if you're going to, like, there's got to be a where are you now? Where do you want to be? That you're always managing that relationship against those two things and identifying the gap and looking at how do you close the gap.
That's great advice. Yeah. I mean, so whether it's your, brother-in-law or your sister-in-law, your parent, whatever, that could be your sounding board or coach, someone that can hold you accountable. I think that's really important.
I would not recommend that you have
A relative,
and particularly not your spouse coach you, because it's just, you can be partners, but my husband and I are both coaches, and we have an explicit agreement that we do not try to coach each other. We'll give each other advice, but there's
right.
we don't.
Good one. So Vicki, we're about done here. What would you like? What would you like everybody on the call to take away from, or this show to take away from what you just talked about?
I would say to have to leave this conversation assessing what's your sales process and what are the pieces that you can begin putting in place, even if it's just I'm going to create an intake form. Like, you don't have to do it all at one time,
right.
But download that form, see if you get some ideas from that, and start to codify your process so that you can shift from reacting to what shows up to driving what that process with your prospects. That's
good advice. Yeah. Get your word processor out and start typing down the questions you ask people, and then start organizing them. And then you'll have a form.
Yes.
That's easy, right?
Or just like the next time you go in, the next time you're on a call, just notice the questions that you ask or you want to ask and put it on a form.
Yeah. And fill it out. And then 3 weeks from now, when you look at the form, you can go, oh yeah, we talked about that. So Vicki, we're about done here. Thank you so much for being on this call. I've had a few people say thank you for the handouts and everything else. So this is awesome. And nice to see you again. So hopefully we can get together again soon when this whole COVID thing is over.
I know. So, all right. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks everyone. All right. This is Dan with the Designer Show signing off. Thanks again, Vicki.
Thank you. I hope you found today's video helpful. If you're ready to take your next step in your leadership journey and to build a great contracting business, I encourage you to check out my book, The Profit Bleed. It's full of great tools and resources that will help you implement the processes and the systems and the structure that will allow you to build a more profitable business, allow you to work less hours, and help you reclaim the joy and fun in your business and in your life again. And for a limited time, you can get my book for free. All you have to do is pay $7.95 shipping and handling. And you simply need to go to theprofitbleed.com/free. Thanks again for joining me for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Profit Builder.